The night was not just cold, it was cruel. It moved like a living thing across the empty land, sending sharp winds that cut through skin like small knives. Inside a torn tent deep in the frozen valley, an alien mother held her small daughter close. The child was shaking nonstop, her little fingers turning blue. Her breath short and painful, the mother pulled her tighter. But her own body was already weak. She had not eaten for 2 days. And the cold was stealing what little strength she had left. She looked around the tent. The thin cloth shook wildly each time the wind screamed. Snow pushed inside from the holes in the corners. The ground was frozen solid, and her knees felt like ice. Her daughter pressed her face into her chest, trying to hide from the cold, but the cold still found her, crawling across her skin like a slow death. The mother whispered, "Stay awake, my little star. Stay with me," her voice cracked. The fear inside her heart was louder than the storm outside. The night was too quiet between the winds. Sometimes silence was worse than noise. Silence meant danger was hiding. Silence meant something was watching. The mother kept looking at the tent opening, afraid that a creature might arrive. This part of the valley was known for hungry beasts who hunted during storms. They could smell weakness, and they were not afraid of tents or families. She hugged her child harder, her arms shaking uncontrollably. The storm grew stronger. The wind slammed the tent so hard that the poles bent. Snowflakes entered like tiny blades, stinging her skin. She looked down at her daughter again. The child's breathing was slowing down. That terrified her more than anything. "Please, please stay alive," she whispered, but she knew warmth was running out. She knew she could not protect her daughter much longer. She pressed her own warm body over the child, trying to share every bit of heat she had left. But even that was fading. Then she heard something: footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps, crunching the snow. Coming closer and closer, the mother froze. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it shaking her ribs. Someone was out there, someone walking straight toward the tent. She slowly lifted her head, listening. The storm had been loud before, but these footsteps were louder. More steady, not like an animal, not like a wandering beast. These steps belonged to someone with purpose. She whispered to her daughter, "Don't make a sound." The child hid her face deeper in her chest. The footsteps stopped just outside the tent. The mother's breath caught in her throat. She reached for a small sharp stone she kept hidden beside her leg. It was not a real weapon, but it was all she had. Her fingers shook so badly she could hardly hold it. For a few moments, everything was still. The wind paused, the snow slowed, and the world outside fell into a heavy silence. The mother could hear breathing deep. Controlled breathing coming from the other side of the thin tent wall. Whoever was there was waiting, listening, maybe deciding what to do next. Fear crawled up her spine. She imagined a bandit, a beast disguised as a man, or a human soldier searching for trouble. She had heard many stories about humans, some kind, many dangerous. She did not know which kind stood outside her tent tonight. Then the shadow moved, slowly, a figure bent down. The tent cloth shook as a gloved hand pressed against it. The mother tightened her grip on the stone, ready to defend her daughter even if she died doing it. But she was weak, too weak. Her arm trembled. Her chest burned from the cold. Her breath came in painful gasps. A voice came, low and calm, but strong enough to cut through the storm. "Is someone alive in there?" The mother's eyes widened. She did not answer. She did not trust him. The voice came again, this time softer. "I'm not here to harm you." The mother still said nothing. Her daughter whimpered quietly, almost silently, but the man outside heard it. His breathing changed when he realized a child was inside. The storm roared again, shaking the tent harder than before. The mother felt her daughter slipping into sleep, dangerous sleep, the kind that comes before freezing to death. She panicked. She knew she had minutes, maybe less. She could not fight alone anymore. She could not keep her child warm. The tent flap opened slowly, and the icy wind poured inside like a monster. The mother raised her stone with shaking arms, ready to protect her child until her last breath. But when the figure stepped in, the mother froze not from the cold, but from shock. It was a human, and his eyes were full of concern, not cruelty. And in that single moment, the night itself seemed to pause, waiting to see what he would do next. The human stood at the entrance of the torn tent, snow covering his shoulders, his breaths coming out like small clouds in the freezing air. His eyes scanned the inside quickly, the weak mother, the half-frozen child, the shaking cloth walls, and the cold that felt sharp enough to cut skin. He knew instantly that the two inside were only minutes away from death. The wind slammed the tent behind him, reminding him that the storm was not going to stop for anyone, not tonight. The mother held her stone tightly, even though her hand shook violently. Her eyes were full of fear. She thought the human might attack them or take the little food they had, but the human did not move toward her. He slowly raised both hands, showing he carried no weapon in them. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said in a low voice. His voice was strong, but there was warmth in it. Warmth that did not match the freezing night outside. He knelt on one knee, keeping some distance so the mother did not panic. His eyes moved to the child. The little girl's body was stiff, her lips turning purple. Her small chest moved with slow, weak breaths. The human felt something sharp in his heart, memories he did not want to remember. Memories of another small child in another storm long ago. A child he could not save. He closed his eyes for one moment, pushing away the pain. This time he would not fail. He refused to let another child die in the cold. He spoke softly, "Your daughter. She is freezing." The mother tightened her hold on the child. Still unsure, still afraid, the wind howled again, lifting the tent wall and throwing snow inside. The human moved quickly to press the cloth down before more cold entered. The mother watched him carefully. His movements were gentle, not threatening. His face looked tired and worn, but not dangerous. "I can help," he said slowly. "But this storm will not wait." The mother looked at her daughter's face and felt her heart twist with fear. The child's eyes were half closed, her body limp. If she did nothing, her daughter would not survive the next hour. A decision she did not want to make was now forced upon her. She stared at the human, searching for lies, searching for danger. But she found none, only worry. And something else, pain, deep pain that he tried to hide. The human noticed her hesitation. He took off one glove and held his hand in the air, letting her see it clearly. "See? No weapon." His fingers were red from the cold. But he didn't care. "Let me check her," he said softly. "Just check." After a long, heavy breath, the mother slowly nodded. Just a little, enough for him to move closer. He crawled inside the tent fully and sat beside them. The cold air around them felt like it was trying to kill everything it touched. He gently placed his hand on the child's forehead. Her skin was like ice, colder than anything he had felt in years. He quickly opened his pack and pulled out a small heating patch. He pressed it against the girl's chest, covering it with his palm to trap the warmth. The mother watched every move, still tense. But she could see the human was trying his best. The child let out a weak sound, almost a cry. The human whispered, "Stay with me, little one. Stay awake." His voice was shaking slightly, not from the cold, but from fear of losing her. Outside, the storm grew louder. The tent moved as if it would lift off the ground any moment. Snow exploded against the fabric like handfuls of sharp stones. The mother looked at the tent walls nervously. "It will break," she whispered. "The tent will not survive the night," the human nodded. "Then we stay close, all of us, and make one source of heat." He removed his heavy winter cloak and opened it wide. The mother's eyes widened. "No. You will freeze," she said. He gave a small, sad smile. "I've survived storms worse than this." That was a lie. This storm was the worst he had seen in years. But he did not care about himself. He wrapped the cloak around the mother and child, then pulled himself closer so the cloak covered all three of them. His body heat spread slowly, fighting the cold that tried to kill them. The mother felt his warmth and looked at him with surprise. His warmth was strong, real, almost shocking. The child slowly breathed a little deeper. The human felt a small relief inside his chest, but the night was far from over. A sudden sound outside made him lift his head deep. Heavy, slow, something big walking through the snow. The mother's eyes widened with terror. "Not now," she whispered. "Not tonight." The human reached for his knife, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Stay close. Don't make a sound," because something dangerous was moving toward the tent, something that was hunting in the storm. And it had smelled the warmth of living bodies inside. The real battle of the night was just beginning. The human held his breath as the heavy footsteps circled outside the tent. The creature moved with slow confidence, like it already knew there were weak bodies inside. The storm made everything blurry outside. But the predator did not need clear sight. It needed only smell, the smell of fear. The smell of warm flesh trying to survive the cold. The mother clutched her daughter and pressed closer to the human without realizing it. Her own shaking was almost as strong as the storm's force. The human kept one arm around the mother and child under the heavy thermal cloak while the other hand gripped his small blade. It was not a large weapon, but he had survived with less before. His eyes stayed fixed on the tent entrance, watching every tiny movement of the cloth, every rustle. Every breath of air felt like the start of an attack. The creature's shadow appeared, huge and misshapen, cast across the thin fabric of the tent by the storm's flashes of light. The mother gasped softly. The human whispered, "I'm here. I won't let anything touch you." The creature sniffed loudly. Making a deep growling sound, the mother squeezed her daughter tighter. The little girl's fingers grabbed the human's coat. Her small body trembling, the human's heart ached. He remembered another child who once clung to him in the same fear, a memory that had haunted him for years. That night, he had arrived too late, and the storm had taken her. Not again, he promised himself. Not now, not this child. The predator scraped its claws across the ground outside, circling slowly, testing for weakness. The human gently placed the cloak more firmly around all three of them. Sealing their warmth in, he leaned his back against the tent wall, preparing to absorb the impact if the beast attacked. His muscles tightened, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility he felt. He had wandered the storm alone for so long, but now 2 fragile lives were depending on him. Inside the tent, the air became warmer slowly. The heating patch on the child's chest glowed softly, and the human's steady body heat wrapped around her like a shield. The mother felt it too. She stared at him with wide, surprised eyes. She had heard stories of humans cold, cruel, distant, but this one was warm like fire, kind like someone who had lost much and still chose to protect others. She whispered, "Why are you helping us?" Her voice was weak but honest. The human did not look at her. He kept his eyes on the moving shadow outside, but his answer was soft. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." His words held a heavy weight, a sad truth hidden behind them. The mother felt something shift in her heart. Respect. Sympathy. Something she did not have time to name. Outside, the predator stopped moving. The silence felt dangerous. Like the calm before lightning strikes. Suddenly, the creature lunged at the tent wall with a loud snarl. The fabric tore, cold air exploding inside. Snow burst into the tent like a wave. The mother screamed and curled around her daughter. The human moved instantly, pushing himself between the tier and the 2 vulnerable bodies. His blade flashed, and he struck the beast's snout through the opening. The creature roared in pain and pulled back, The wind slammed against the tent again as the human covered the tier with his own body, letting the cold hit him instead of them. Snow collected quickly in his hair and clothes. His fingers turned stiff, but he kept his back pressed against the torn fabric. Blocking the entrance, his voice was low. "Stay under the cloak. Don't move." The mother wanted to tell him not to risk his life for them, but she could not speak. Her throat felt closed with fear and gratitude at the same time. The creature roared again and hit the tent from another side. The poles bent dangerously, but the human shifted, bracing the weak structure with his body. Every blow pushed the freezing fabric into his skin. Every gust of wind tried to tear the tent apart. But he did not move. He was the wall. He was the shield. He was the heat keeping them alive. Minutes felt like hours. The mother listened to the humans breathing heavy. Controlled, determined. He was shaking from the cold now. But he did not collapse. His voice came again, quieter, pushing through the pain. "The child. Keep her warm. Don't let her sleep too deep." The mother nodded even though he could not see her. She pulled her daughter tightly under the cloak. Sharing their combined heat, her daughter's breathing slowly steadied. The glow of life returning little by little. Outside, the predator roared again. But this time the roar sounded frustrated, not hungry. Eventually, the heavy footsteps faded into the storm. The human kept his position, still blocking the tier, still guarding the two lives behind him. Even when the danger passed, he did not move away. The mother finally gathered the courage to whisper, "You saved us. You saved her." The human lowered his head, his breath trembling. "Not yet," he said softly. "The night is long. And I'm not leaving." Inside the fragile tent, 3 lives pressed together, fighting a storm meant to kill them all. But the human's heat, his strength, his pain, his refusal to let go, began to turn the deadly night into something else. Hope, wrapped in one warm heartbeat, refusing to fade. The storm did not rest, not even for a second. The wind kept punching the tent like a giant trying to crush it with invisible fists. Snow swirled outside in wild circles, rising and falling like angry white ghosts inside the broken shelter. The human stayed pressed against the torn wall, his back freezing, his clothes soaked, his jaw clenched tight to keep his teeth from shaking. The mother watched him with wide, scared eyes. She had seen warriors fight before, but never someone fight the night, the cold, and a monster all at the same time. The little girl whimpered softly under the heavy cloak. The mother stroked her hair gently, whispering, "You are safe. You are safe." But she knew safety was fragile, thin like the fabric that was one strike away from tearing completely. Every time the wind pushed in, the human pushed harder, trying to seal the tear with nothing but his body. He did not speak, but she could see the pain on his face, pain he hid, so he would not scare her or the child. Outside, the predator had not left. Its heavy footsteps stopped only for a moment before circling back. The creature was patient, too patient. It moved slowly, planning, waiting for the right moment. Its shadow returned, bigger than before, stretching across the tent wall like the wing of a giant beast. The mother shivered. "It's back," she whispered. The human nodded silently, his blade ready in his trembling hand. A deep growl rolled through the air, louder than the storm. The ground seemed to shake with it. The mother covered her daughter's ears. The child's small fingers grabbed her sleeve. Frightened beyond words, the human turned his head slightly, speaking just loud enough for the mother to hear. "Stay low. Stay behind me." His voice cracked from the cold but stayed strong with purpose. The creature hit the tent again, this time with full force. The entire structure lifted off the ground for a moment. The mother screamed and threw her body over her daughter. The human planted one knee into the frozen dirt and held the pole with all his strength to keep the tent from collapsing. Snow burst inside like an explosion, covering everything in white dust. the beast roared, its breath steaming hot against the cold air outside. Then came the claws, long, sharp, slicing through the fabric beside the human. The tear grew deeper, the freezing wind poured in. The mother gasped as she saw a huge glowing eye through the torn flap, staring straight at them with hunger and rage. The human did not hesitate. He shoved his blade through the tear. Straight into that eye, the creature screamed, shaking the entire valley with its pain. It stumbled backward, thrashing wildly in the snow. But injured predators were often more dangerous than hungry ones. The mother knew this. The human knew this too. The beast returned quickly, angrier than before. It ran the tent again and again, trying to break inside, trying to reach the warmth it smelled. The poles bent, the roof dipped dangerously low. Snow piled up on top, ready to crush them. The human pressed upward with his back. Using his own body as support, his arms shook violently. But he did not let the structure fall. "You can't keep doing this," the mother cried, fear rising in her voice. She saw his lips turning blue, his eyes heavy from exhaustion. The human breathed hard. "I can. And I will. Until you both see the sun." He pushed harder against the roof, holding it steady. The mother felt tears burn her eyes. She had never seen someone fight like this. Not for strangers, not for her. The predator prepared for another charge. The human heard it gathering strength. He knew if the next hit landed, the tent would collapse and the cold would finish what the beast started. He took a deep breath, looked over his shoulder and said, "Hold her tight." Then he lifted the knife, stepped forward, and slipped out through the tear before the mother could stop him. "No!" she cried, reaching for him. But he was already outside, swallowed by the storm. The world outside was louder than thunder. The wind struck him with icy knives, but he stood firm, facing the massive shadow approaching through the snow. The creature roared, bleeding from its injured eye. Towering above him, the human raised his blade. Small compared to the monster, but his courage made him look larger than any soldier she had ever seen. Inside the tent, the mother held her daughter close. Shaking with fear, she watched the figures outside, one small move in the blinding snow. She heard snarls, growls, the crash of bodies slamming against frozen ground. The storm swallowed most sounds, but the fear inside her heart grew louder and louder. Minutes passed like hours. Then suddenly, the snow around the tent went quiet. No roars, no heavy footsteps. Nothing but the storm's distant howl. The mother's breath caught. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Please, please be alive." Then the torn flap moved, and the human stepped inside, bleeding, freezing, exhausted, but standing. "We're safe," he whispered, his voice barely holding together. "For now." The mother stared at him in shock, gratitude, and something deeper she didn't yet understand. The night had tried to kill them, but the human had fought it back with nothing but bravery, a small blade, and a burning heart. The storm outside was still wild, but inside the tent, everything fell into a strange, heavy silence. The human leaned against the torn wall, breathing hard as blood dripped slowly down his arm. The mother stared at him with wide eyes, unable to understand how someone could fight a beast that size and still stand afterward. The little girl peeked from under the cloak, her small eyes blinking sleepily. Confused but drawn to the tall figure who had saved her twice in one night, the human tried to speak, but his voice cracked from the cold. "Is she all right?" he asked, looking toward the child. The mother nodded slowly. "She's warmer now. Because of you." Her voice was soft, almost shy. She reached for the heating patch on her daughter's chest, feeling its fading warmth. She pressed her cheek against the girl's forehead and sighed with relief. The child's skin now had a faint glow instead of the pale blue of death. The human lowered himself onto the frozen floor, his body shaking from exhaustion and cold. The mother's eyes followed him constantly, watching him like someone watching a miracle and a mystery at the same time. She whispered, "Why did you go out? You could have died." The human gave a weak smile. "So could you. And her." He pointed toward the child. "That was reason enough." The mother opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. No one outside her people had ever risked anything for them. Humans especially were known to avoid her kind, scared of their strange eyes and glowing skin. Yet this human had fought a monster, the storm, and even the cold itself for them. She whispered, "I don't understand." The human rested his head against the tent wall, his eyes half closed. "You don't need to," he said gently. But his voice held a pain that caught her attention. A pain deeper than wounds, deeper than cold, deeper than storms. The mother looked closer at his face. She had seen fear, anger, and cruelty in humans before, but she had never seen a face that carried so much quiet sadness. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. The human tried to ignore the question, but her voice was too gentle, too sincere. It touched a part of him he kept buried for years. He took a slow breath, snow still melting in his hair. "Long time ago," he began, "I was in a storm like this. But worse." His eyes lowered, his hand tightening around his knee. "I was with my daughter, my little girl." The mother's heart paused in its rhythm. Her voice trembled. "What happened?" The human swallowed hard, the memory stabbing him like a knife. "The cold took her," he whispered. "I tried everything. Everything. But I couldn't save her." His voice broke on the last word, a raw sound that surprised even him. "She slipped away in my arms." And the storm swallowed her voice. He closed his eyes tightly as if trying to block out the memory. "I couldn't protect her. I failed." The mother felt tears rise in her eyes before she even realized it. She covered her mouth with her hand, stunned by the weight of his grief. I'm so sorry," she whispered. Her voice shook. The human nodded sadly. "That's why I couldn't walk away tonight," he said. "I swore I would never let another child die in a storm if I could stop it." He looked toward the small girl curled under the cloak. "Tonight, she reminded me of her." The mother pressed her hand to her chest, feeling a tightness she wasn't used to. Her people rarely expressed deep emotions openly, but now she felt something overwhelming inside her: respect, sadness, gratitude, and something gentler, something warm. She looked at him with new eyes, not as a stranger, not as a human, but as someone broken in the same way she feared she would break if her daughter had died. The child suddenly moved and reached out a tiny hand. Touching the human's fingers, he froze, staring at her in surprise. The girl whispered weakly, "Warm." The human smiled faintly. "I'm glad," he whispered. The mother watched the moment with her heart trembling. It felt like the storm outside had softened for a brief second, giving them a breath of peace after endless fear. The human shifted, wincing as pain shot through his injured arm. The mother quickly leaned forward. "You are hurt," she said. "Let me see." He shook his head at first. "I'll be fine." But she gently pulled his arm closer, ignoring his protest. Her hands glowed faintly with her species' natural healing warmth. She pressed them against the wound, and the human sucked in a sharp breath as soothing heat spread through his skin. His muscles relaxed, and his shivering slowed. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Now let me save you." The human lowered his head, humbled, moved, and completely silent. The warmth of her hands felt like comfort he hadn't known in years, comfort he had forgotten how to accept. Inside that broken tent, surrounded by deadly cold, something new formed: trust, a fragile bond between a human carrying old grief and an alien mother carrying new hope. And their survival was no longer just about the storm. It was about each other. The storm outside grew stronger as the night continued. The wind screamed like a living creature trying to tear the world apart. Snow hit the tent with such force that it sounded like 1,000 stones thrown from the sky. But inside the fragile shelter, Something new had begun, a small island of warmth between three freezing souls. The human sat close to the mother and her daughter. His injured arm wrapped carefully, his body still shook from the cold. But the pain was less now because of the mother's healing touch. The little girl lay between them, wrapped tightly in the heavy cloak, her breathing soft but steady. The mother held her daughter on one side, while the human held them both from the other, their warmth mixed, turning into one shared heat that kept them alive. For a long time none of them spoke. They only listened to the storm, to their own breaths, to the slow beating of the child's heart. The mother finally broke the silence. Her voice gentle. "You should rest," she said. "Your body is tired." The human smiled weakly. "If I close my eyes, I might fall asleep," he said. "And if I fall asleep, I won't feel the cold, which is dangerous." He gave a small laugh. But the mother heard the truth beneath it. "We will stay awake together," she whispered, shifting closer so her warmth reached him more easily. The human nodded, grateful he didn't say it. But her presence felt comforting, calming, like a lantern in the dark. The little girl made a quiet sound and curled against him, grabbing the fabric of his coat with her tiny fingers. The human's heart tightened. He placed a gentle hand on her back, feeling her small breaths. "She's strong," he whispered. "Stronger than she looks." The mother smiled softly, brushing her daughter's hair. "Yes. But tonight she came too close to dying." Her eyes lowered. "If you had not found us." She couldn't finish the sentence. The human understood her silence. "Nobody dies tonight," he said firmly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a strong promise. The mother felt something warm spread in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. The tent shook violently as another wave of wind slammed into it. The poles creaked dangerously. The mother gasped and grabbed her daughter. "It will break," she cried, but the human steadied the poles with both hands, pushing upward with his full strength. "It won't," he said through chattering teeth. "Not while I'm here." His shoulders strained. His muscles burned, but he did not let go. "Let me help," the mother said. She pressed her back against the other side of the pole, supporting it with her own weight. Their shoulders touched lightly, and for a brief moment, the human felt a sense of teamwork he hadn't felt in years. Together, their combined strength kept the tent standing. The storm howled, but it could not break them. Minutes passed, then hours. Their breaths created small clouds in the air. But the shared warmth in the cloak kept the worst of the cold away. The human's voice came out low. "Tell me, what is your name?" The mother hesitated. Her people rarely shared names with strangers. But tonight he was no stranger. "Linari," she whispered. The name sounded soft, almost like music. The child stirred slightly at the sound. The human nodded. "Linari." "I'm Eric." The mother repeated it in a soft whisper. "Eric." The name felt strong, warm, safe. The girl opened her eyes slowly and murmured, "Eric?" "Warm." Linari pressed her forehead to her daughter's, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, little star. He kept you warm." Eric looked away, touched deeply by the child's words. He had not heard a child say his name like that in a long time. It brought back memories, painful, but also beautiful. His daughter's laughter, her tiny hands, her smile, for the first time in years. Remembering her didn't feel like a knife in his chest. It felt softer, like a memory he could finally hold without breaking. The storm raged on, but inside the tent, their small world grew tighter, warmer, safer. Linari leaned her head against Eric's shoulder for support. She did not realize she was doing it, and he did not pull away. Their breaths blended with the child's soft warmth, creating a small circle of life in the middle of a world trying to freeze them. "Eric," Linari whispered after a long silence, "why do you travel alone in such storms?" Eric hesitated. Then he spoke quietly, "Because it's easier to be alone than to lose someone again." His answer pierced Linari's heart. She looked at him with deep sadness. "You are not alone tonight," she whispered softly. "Not anymore." Eric's eyes softened. He looked at Linari. Then at the child sleeping safely between them. Something inside him shifted. Something heavy lifted. Something warm returned. Outside, the storm screamed, but inside the torn tent, warmth grew stronger than fear, stronger than cold, stronger than the night itself. They were three strangers brought together by danger. And now, the night could not break them anymore, because they held on to each other. The sky was still dark when Linari opened her eyes. For a moment she could not tell if she was dreaming or awake. The storm's howl had softened. The wind no longer screamed like a monster trying to tear the world apart. She felt warmth on one side, her daughter breathing gently against her chest, and warmth on the other, Eric leaning slightly against her shoulder. Still holding the pole of the tent as if guarding them even in his sleep, Linari watched him quietly. His face looked peaceful for the first time since he entered the tent. The lines of pain and exhaustion on his forehead had softened. He looked younger, almost gentle, almost fragile. She remembered his words from the night before. The way he spoke about losing his daughter. How his voice shook with old grief. And yet, despite all his scars, he sat there the entire night protecting them without rest. She touched his hand lightly to check if he was awake. His skin was cold, but not freezing. His breathing was steady. "Eric," she whispered. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking like someone who had not slept in days. "Morning already?" he asked, his tired voice carrying a soft smile. Linari shook her head. "Almost." "The storm is dying." Eric looked around the tent. Then at the child who was sleeping peacefully between them. A wave of relief washed across his face. "She made it," he whispered. Linari nodded, pressing her lips together as emotion filled her chest. "Because you refused to let her go," she said. Eric lowered his eyes. "I did what anyone should do." Linari shook her head gently. "No, not anyone." Outside, the wind began to calm. Snowflakes drifted slowly instead of flying like knives. The dark sky brightened to the faintest blue. The world slowly shifted from danger to hope. Eric pushed himself up carefully. His muscles ached, but he forced his body to move. "We should check outside," he said. "Make sure it's safe." Linari hesitated. "Is the creature gone?" Eric nodded. "If it wasn't, we would have heard it by now." He lifted the torn flap of the tent and stepped outside. The cold bit into his skin, but it was nothing compared to last night's deadly freeze. The entire valley was covered in deep white snow, smooth and untouched except for the huge claw marks left by the predator. Eric followed the marks with his eyes. They led far into the distance, disappearing into the mountains. "It's gone," he whispered. Linari stepped out beside him, holding her daughter close. Her breath caught as she saw the world around her quiet. Soft and shining, the rising sun painted the snow in gold, making the valley look like another world. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Eric nodded. "Sunrise after a storm always is." The child opened her sleepy eyes and reached her small hand toward the sun. A tiny smile formed on her face. "Warm," she murmured. Eric couldn't stop himself. He smiled widely, deeper and brighter than he had in years. Linari saw that smile and felt something warm spread inside her chest. Something she never expected to feel toward a human stranger. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed across the valley engines. Linari stiffened. "Someone is coming." Eric turned quickly. "Scanning the horizon, a rescue team," he said. Recognizing the sound, "They must have been searching for you." Linari held her daughter close. Unsure how to feel, she had been alone for so long that she wasn't used to help. But Eric stood beside her, calm and steady. "You're safe now," he said softly. A small rescue craft landed on the snow, and two alien workers rushed toward them. Their eyes widened in shock when they saw Linari alive. Holding her child, they bowed their heads with relief. "We thought the storm took you," one of them said. Laneri nodded, then stepped aside so they could see Eric. "He saved us," she said, her voice full of respect. Full of meaning, Eric looked down shyly, not used to praise. The workers stared at the human with wide eyes. They had never seen a human risk so much for someone not of his kind. "Thank you," they said in unison, bowing deeply. Eric felt embarrassed but grateful, as the rescue team prepared to take Laneri and her daughter aboard. Laneri turned to Eric. Her eyes were soft, glowing in the morning light. "Will we see you again?" she asked quietly. Eric hesitated, emotion tightening his throat. "If you want to," he said with a gentle smile. Laneri stepped closer, her daughter still holding Eric's coat. "We do," she whispered. Eric nodded and placed his hand gently on the child's head. "Stay warm, little star," he said softly. The child smiled and hugged him without fear. Laneri felt tears rise, tears of gratitude. Tears of something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. As the rescue craft lifted into the air, Laneri watched Eric grow smaller in the snow-covered valley. He stood there, alone but no longer lonely. Warmed not by fire, but by the connection he found. The sunrise touched his face as he whispered to himself, "Not alone. Not anymore." And far above, Laneri held her daughter and whispered, "He saved us." But he also saved himself. 3 lives had crossed in a deadly storm, and all 3 were changed forever.